Forget the Grizzlies, Nuggets, Rockets, Knicks, Pacers, Lakers, Bucks. The only teams that matter are the Thunder, Cavs, and Celtics. I'm predicting one of them is going to win the NBA championship. And just so you know, it's not because of their records. Normally, the gap between the first, second, and third seed isn't this big, but when you watch these teams play, you can really tell that there's a difference. If we're talking about tiers, only the Thunder, Celtics, and Cavs belong in the S tier. Everything else is secondary, and I'm not here to argue tiers. I'm just saying that these are the top 3 teams that matter right now. What really made me confident enough to make this video was the trade deadline. Before you ask, yes, I'm talking about the same deadline where Luka got traded to the Lakers and AD ended up on the Mavericks and teamed up with Kyrie. Am I worried about the Mavs? No, and that's even after watching them beat the Celtics on their own home court. I still believe there are teams in a league of their own, and the Celtics are one of them. The only thing that made me hesitate was the Cavs. A lot of people have seen them as pretenders rather than true contenders, but at this point, it's clear that they're legit. It's not a fluke, they're just a well-coached team. And that trade deadline was what really solidified my confidence in them. You see, they were in a tricky spot. They were already a great team, so they didn't want to mess up their chemistry, but at the same time, the NBA is constantly evolving, and standing still isn't an option. That's why the Cavs getting DeAndre Hunter was one of the smartest moves at the deadline in the East. This reminds me of when the Raptors traded for Marc Gasol in 2019, a team that was already winning but made a move with the playoffs in mind. The Cavs got Hunter specifically for a potential series against the Celtics, so they were thinking about the playoffs too when they made this move. So when the Cavs beat Boston last month, Hunter was the primary defender on both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. He's a big wing who can handle those matchups without getting played off the floor on either end. He's a clear upgrade over the Cavs' other wing options, good enough to make a real impact on an already strong offense but not so ball dominant that he disrupts their rhythm. It's a perfect fit and arguably the most important trade for this year's title race. I'm really glad the Cavs made this deal because it's a strategy that's already been tested and proven. Look at the Hawks. They built a defense around Trae Young by surrounding him with strong defenders like DeAndre Hunter and Dyson Daniels to cover up his biggest weakness, defense. And the Cavs, they essentially have 2 Trae Youngs and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. No disrespect to them, but they're both undersized guards. Garland is listed at 6'1" and Mitchell at 6'3". That could be a nightmare in a potential Eastern Conference Finals matchup against the Celtics, where they'd have to go up against 6'4" guards like Jrue Holiday and Derek White. And if the Cavs made the finals, they'd have to deal with a 6'6", 6'7"-ish Shea in the backcourt, and that's not exactly an ideal matchup. And their GM, he saw the potential problems, and he didn't like what he saw, and he made a move to fix it. And adding a wing like DeAndre Hunter who can hold his own defensively was a perfect pickup. When it comes to perfect pickups, the Thunder took a much different approach at the deadline. They were far less active than I had hoped. Yes, they made a couple of deals with the Hornets and Pelicans, but their focus was clearly on the long term rather than making a win-now move. In the end, they walked away with 2 future draft picks and an open roster spot. And we've seen this from them time and time again. They're always thinking ahead, avoiding impulsive decisions. But for once, I actually wanted them to make a bold move. Not something extreme like trading for Jimmy Butler, but I really wanted them to maybe go after Cam Johnson. I even made an entire video about it. In that video, I laid out a trade proposal where the Thunder call up Nets GM Sean Marks and offer Isaiah Joe, Nikola Topic, a second-round pick, and a first-round pick for Cam Johnson. And if that wasn't enough to get it done, just throw in another pick. Boom, now you got a player in Cam Johnson who can space the floor from the corner, come off pin down screens, and create even more driving lanes for J-Dub and SGA because of the pressure he puts on defenses from deep. But of course, they didn't make that move. But at least the Thunder do have Holmgren back, which is a bigger boost than anything they could have picked up at the trade deadline. Because in the first 9 games of the season with Holmgren, OKC averaged 7.2 blocks per game, with Holmgren contributing 2.9 himself. During his 40-game absence, that number dropped to 5.2 per game. But in his return against Toronto, he had 4 blocks and the team finished with 7, showing that the Thunder might be reclaiming their status as the league's best shot-blocking team. You see, Holmgren is essential to their rim protection and his presence changes everything. But I really do wish that they did go after Cam Johnson. I understand how much Holmgren adds to this team. His return is going to make a big difference. But imagine if the Thunder had landed Cam Johnson. Now teams can't just stay in the paint and bring a lot of help when Shea is driving, because now you got a guy like Cam Johnson in the corner who you got to worry about. But I mean, this team, I still think that they're the best team in the league, but acquiring Cam Johnson would have taken them to a whole new level. But now let's shift to the Celtics, and it's important to consider how much respect last year's champion deserves. In their finals matchup against the Mavericks, it always felt like Boston was in control, even though Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum weren't at their absolute best. Despite that, they still got the job done. This season, they don't feel as dominant, but their roster runs deep. Even without Porzingis, and because he was missing most of the playoffs last year, they were still the best team. The only concern is time for Boston, because they have an aging roster and they might not have many chances left to run it back. That makes the season a crucial opportunity to go back to back. Right now, I still think, like I said before, that the Thunder will win the championship. Even if Holmgren returns at just 75 to 80% of his best, he still elevates them a lot. Plus, they currently hold the best record in the league, even ahead of the Cavs, who have been historically great this season. Some might argue that the Celtics are coasting and will turn it up in the playoffs, and while that's possible, the Thunder are still my favorites to take the title. But what do you think? Is it really just between the Thunder, Celtics, and Cavs for the championship? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.